The forest of Velkar Prime stretched endlessly before Daehyun, dark and mysterious under the twin suns. He stood at the edge of the human research camp, checking his scanner one more time. The device beeped softly, showing nothing unusual. Just another quiet day on this strange planet. Daehyun liked quiet days. They gave him time to study the plants, the rocks, and the odd creatures that lived here. He was an engineer, but he loved nature more than machines. His boss, Ji-woo, often joked that he should have been a wildlife photographer instead. Dae-hyun, don't go too far. Ji-woo's voice crackled through his earpiece. She was watching him from the safety of their hover vehicle, parked 50 meters behind. The Vraleth, everyone feared them. They were massive predators, bigger than earth bears, with 6 glowing eyes and claws that could tear through metal. The Galactic Council had strict rules about them. Stay away. Don't make contact. Consider them extremely dangerous. But Dae-hyun wondered if the rules were fair. He had seen footage of Vraleth from the camp's surveillance drones. Yes, they looked scary. But they also seemed organized. They hunted in groups. They protected their young. They even built simple shelters. I'll be careful, Dae-hyun replied, stepping into the tree line. The forest swallowed him quickly. Thick trunks rose like pillars, their bark rough and gray. Strange moss glowed faintly in the shadows, casting blue light across his path. Dae-hyun walked slowly, careful not to disturb anything. That's when he heard it, a soft whimpering sound, like a puppy in pain. Dae-hyun froze. His hand moved to the stun device on his belt, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he crept toward the sound, moving around a massive fallen tree. There, trapped beneath a heavy branch, was a Vraleth cub. It was small, barely the size of a large dog. Its dark fur was matted with dirt, and one of its hind legs was pinned under the wood. The cub's 6 eyes blinked rapidly, tracking Dae-hyun's movement. But it didn't growl or snap. Instead, it made that whimpering sound again. Then the cub did something that changed everything. It lifted one of its smaller front paws, holding something out toward Dae-hyun. In its grip was a carved wooden figure, broken cleanly in 2 pieces. The figure looked like an adult Vraleth, skillfully made despite its simple design. The cub pushed the broken toy toward him again, making a soft, chirping noise. Ji-woo, Dae-hyun whispered into his comm. You're not going to believe this. What? What's happening? Her voice was tight with worry. There's a cub here. It's hurt. And it's asking for help. Dae-hyun, no. Get out of there right now. The adults could be nearby. I know. But I can't just leave it. That's exactly what you should do. Those things are classified as... Dae-hyun muted his comm. He knew Ji-woo was right, technically. But looking at the cub's eyes, seeing the way it held out that broken toy, he couldn't walk away. Slowly, very slowly, Dae-hyun approached. The cub tensed, but didn't try to bite or scratch. Up close, he could see the intelligence in those 6 eyes. They weren't the eyes of a mindless animal. They were watching, thinking, hoping. Okay, little one, Dae-hyun said softly. Let's get you free first. He examined the branch. It was heavy, but not impossible to lift. Dae-hyun braced himself and pushed upward with all his strength. The wood shifted, then rose. The cub immediately pulled its leg free and scrambled backward. Dae-hyun let the branch fall and stepped back, giving the creature space. The cub tested its leg, limping slightly, but able to walk. Then it looked at Dae-hyun again and pushed the broken toy forward with its nose. You really want me to fix this, don't you? The cub chirped. Dae-hyun sat down cross-legged on the forest floor. He pulled out his field repair kit, a small pouch containing various tools he used to fix equipment in the wilderness. The cub watched with all 6 eyes as he carefully picked up both pieces of the carved figure. The craftsmanship was remarkable. Someone had spent time on this, carving details into the wood with precision. The break was clean, which meant it could be repaired easily. Dae-hyun took out a tube of bioadhesive, the kind that worked on organic materials. He applied it carefully to both broken edges, then pressed them together. Next, he wrapped thin reinforcement wire around the joint, making sure it would hold under pressure. The repair took about 10 minutes. When he finished, the figure was whole again. Dae-hyun tested it gently, making sure the connection was solid. Then, he held it out to the cub. The small Vralith sniffed the toy, examining every angle. It bit down on the repaired section carefully, testing its strength. When the repair held, the cub released a series of happy chirping sounds and clutched the toy to its chest. Dae-hyun smiled. That's when he heard the growling, deep, rumbling growls that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Dae-hyun's blood went cold. He turned slowly and found himself surrounded. 6 adult Vralith had emerged from the forest, silent as shadows. They formed a circle around him, each one massive and terrifying. Their 6 eyes glowed in the dim light, and their claws dug into the earth. The largest one, a female with scars across her face, stepped forward. She had to weigh at least 400 kilograms. Her teeth were as long as Dae-hyun's fingers. Dae-hyun! Ji-woo's panicked voice exploded in his ear. He'd forgotten the comm was still on. I see them on the thermal scanner. Get out of there! Ji-woo's! 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 But there was nowhere to run. The cub limped toward the scarred female, chirping excitedly. It held up the repaired toy, showing it to her. The female lowered her massive head, sniffing the toy, and then the cub, her 6 eyes fixed on Dae-hyun. He forced himself to stay still. Running would trigger their chase instinct. Fighting would be suicide. All he could do was wait. The female Vralith growled, a sound so deep Dae-hyun felt it in his bones. Then she sniffed him, her hot breath washing over his face. She was close enough to bite his head off with one snap of her jaws. But she didn't. Instead, the female stepped back. She made a low rumbling sound to the other adults. One by one, they backed away, melting into the forest as silently as they had appeared. The cub chirped one more time at Dae-hyun, still clutching its repaired toy. Then, it turned and followed the adults into the darkness. Dae-hyun stood there for a full minute, unable to move. His legs were shaking. His heart pounded like a drum. Dae-hyun? Ji-woo's voice was barely a whisper. Are you alive? Yeah, he managed to say. I'm alive. What just happened? Dae-hyun looked at the spot where the Vralith had vanished. I think I just made first contact with an uncontactable species. Yeah, you realize we have to report this. I know. But as Dae-hyun walked back to the hover vehicle, his mind was racing. The Vralith weren't mindless predators. They had culture. They made art. They cared for their young. That broken toy meant something important to them. And somehow, by fixing one small thing, Dae-hyun had communicated something they understood. Respect. Kindness. Help without asking for anything in return. As he climbed into the vehicle, Ji-woo stared at him with wide eyes. The Galactic Council is going to lose their minds. Probably, Dae-hyun agreed. But did you see that cub's face when I fixed its toy? I saw it on the scanner feed. Then you saw what I saw. Intelligence, communication, trust. Ji-woo was quiet for a moment. Then she said, What are you going to do? Dae-hyun looked back at the forest. Somewhere in there, a cub was playing with a repaired toy. And a pack of dangerous predators had chosen to let a human live. I'm going to prove everyone wrong about them, he said quietly. And that's exactly what he intended to do. 3 weeks had passed since Dae-hyun's encounter with the Vralith cub. 3 weeks of careful observation, detailed notes, and endless arguments with the Galactic Council representative. His name was Hyun-woo. And he didn't like Dae-hyun's plans at all. You want to leave gifts for them? Hyun-woo stood in the research camp's main building. His arms crossed. He was a military man. Everything about him neat and precise. These are classified predators, not pets. They're not animals, Dae-hyun said patiently. He'd had this conversation 5 times already. They showed intelligence, tool use, cultural behavior. They showed you mercy once. That doesn't make them friendly. Ji-woo looked up from her computer. Actually, the data supports Dae-hyun's theory. I've been reviewing all the drone footage we have of Vraleth behavior. They build structures. They teach their young. They even appear to have burial rituals. Hyunwoo shook his head. My orders are clear. Maintain distance. No contact. If the Vraleth approach the camp, I'm authorized to use defensive measures. They won't approach if we don't give them a reason to trust us, Dae-hyun argued. Exactly my point. We don't need their trust. We need to complete our research and leave this planet. But Dae-hyun wasn't going to give up. That night, after Hyunwoo went to sleep, he gathered several items from the camp's workshop. Broken tools, damaged equipment, things that needed repair but weren't critical. Ji-woo found him at the forest edge just before dawn. I have to know, Dae-hyun said simply. Then I'm coming with you. Someone needs to document this properly. Together, they walked to the spot where Dae-hyun had met the cub. The forest was quiet, the air cool and damp. Dae-hyun arranged the broken items on a flat rock, making sure they were visible. A damaged scanner, a bent metal tool, a cracked data pad. Then they retreated and waited. Nothing happened for hours. The twin suns rose higher, painting the forest in golden light. Ji-woo recorded everything with her portable camera. Dae-hyun watched through binoculars, patient and still. Finally, movement. The cub appeared first, limping slightly but moving with more confidence than before. It still carried the repaired toy, now tucked against its body. Behind the cub came 2 adults, moving with cautious grace. The cub approached the rock and sniffed the items. It picked up the damaged scanner, turning it over with surprising care. One of the adults, a large male with a notched ear, rumbled something. The cub put the scanner down and picked up the bent tool instead. They're examining them, Ji-woo whispered, her voice filled with excitement. Look at the way they're handling the objects. That's not random curiosity. They understand these are tools. The adults didn't take anything. They studied the items, sniffed them, then melted back into the forest with the cub. Dae-hyun smiled. They're being careful, smart, or they don't want what we're offering, Ji-woo pointed out. We'll see. For 5 days, nothing changed. The items remained on the rock, untouched. Dae-hyun began to think Ji-woo was right. Maybe the Vraleth weren't interested after all. Then, on the 6th day, the items were gone. In their place was something else. A small, carved stone, shaped like a star. It was rough, but intentional, clearly made by someone. They left a gift, Ji-woo breathed. They took what we offered and left something in return. It's trade, Dae-hyun said. Basic cultural exchange. They understand reciprocity. Dae-hyun said. Dae-hyun said. Dae-hyun said. Dae-hyun said. Dae-hyun said. Dae-hyun said. But Hyunwoo was less impressed when they showed him. Or they're testing whether you'll keep providing resources. You could be training them to expect handouts. That's not what this is, Dae-hyun insisted. Then what is it? Communication. The beginning of trust. 2 weeks later, the cub came back alone. Dae-hyun was working outside the camp's perimeter when he heard the familiar chirping sound. He turned, and there it was. The small Vraleth, limping toward him. The cub had grown noticeably larger, but it still carried that repaired toy. And in its other paw, it held something else. A broken device. Unlike anything Dae-hyun had seen before. It was made of crystal and metal, formed into a smooth oval shape. Cracks ran through the crystal, and the metal pieces had come loose. The cub set it down in front of Dae-hyun and stepped back, making an expectant chirping sound. You want me to fix this? Dae-hyun said softly. He picked up the device carefully. It was heavier than it looked, and warm to the touch. Ji-woo, come here. Quickly, Ji-woo emerged from the camp, saw the cub, and froze. Is that? Yes. And it brought something. Dae-hyun showed her the device. Ji-woo's eyes went wide. That's not natural. That's technology. Old technology. Can we fix it? I don't know. We'd need to figure out what it does first. They brought the device inside, with the cub watching from a safe distance. Hyun-woo was away on a supply run, which made things easier. For the next 8 hours, Dae-hyun and Ji-woo worked on the device. It was incredibly sophisticated. The crystal wasn't decorative. It was the core of the device, capable of storing and processing information. The metal pieces acted as sensors and emitters. As they worked, Ji-woo ran comparison analyses against the Galactic database. Dae-hyun, she said suddenly. What? Similar devices have been found in ruins across this planet. Ancient ruins, thousands of years old. So the Vralith aren't primitive. They were advanced. Were. Past tense. Something happened to their civilization. Dae-hyun looked at the broken device with new understanding. This wasn't just a tool. It was a piece of history. A fragment of what the Vralith once were. He worked through the night, determined to restore it. The crystal's cracks needed filling with conductive material. The metal sensors needed realignment. The power cell, a bioorganic component, needed replacement with something compatible. Finally, as dawn broke, the device hummed to life. It projected a holographic display above its surface, showing atmospheric data, temperature readings, and geological information. An environmental scanner, more advanced than anything humanity currently used. Dae-hyun carried it outside. The cub was still waiting, curled up near the camp's edge. Here, Dae-hyun said, setting the device down. Good as new. Better, actually. The cub sniffed the device, and the hologram responded to its presence, changing colors. The small Vralith chirped excitedly, then did something unexpected. It howled, a long, musical sound that echoed through the forest. Within minutes, 3 adult Vralith emerged from the trees, the scarred female from before, the male with the notched ear, and another male covered in dark stripes. They approached the device cautiously. The striped male, larger than the others, picked it up carefully in his massive jaws. He activated it, studying the holographic display with obvious intelligence. Then all 3 adults looked at Dae-hyun. The scarred female rumbled, a deep sound that felt like communication. The notched ear male lowered his head slightly. The striped male set the device down and picked up a stone with his paw, placing it beside the scanner. Another gift. Another acknowledgement. Ji-woo, watching from the safety of the camp building, recorded everything. They're not just intelligent, she whispered into her recorder. They're asking for help. They know they've lost something, and they think we can help them get it back. The Vralith retreated into the forest, taking the repaired scanner with them. Only the cub remained, sitting near Dae-hyun. It set down its toy and pushed it toward him, then pulled it back. Not an offering, but a gesture of trust. I think it wants to stay nearby, Dae-hyun said. You're not seriously considering. I'm not keeping it as a pet, Ji-woo. But if it wants to learn, to observe, I'm not going to drive it away. Over the following days, the cub became a regular visitor. It watched Dae-hyun work, tilting its head when he used tools. It chirped questions. Dae-hyun was sure they were questions when he did something unexpected. Then Hyun-woo returned, and everything changed. Absolutely not, the military officer said, staring at the cub from a safe distance. You cannot have a Vralith hanging around the camp. It's not hurting anything. It's a predator. Today it's small and cute. Tomorrow it's big enough to tear you apart. It's not going to. You don't know that, Hyun-woo's voice rose. You're making assumptions based on sentiment, not science. The science supports everything I've said, Ji-woo interjected. I've compiled months of data. The Vrolith show every marker of sapient behavior. Then they're dangerous for different reasons, Hyunwoo countered. A sapient predator species is exactly what the Galactic Council worries about. Why? Because they might compete with us. Because they might be a threat. 2. The argument continued for hours, but Dae-hyun knew he'd already won. The cub kept coming back. The adults kept bringing broken items. And slowly, carefully, a bridge was being built between two species that should have been enemies. The question wasn't whether the Vrolith were intelligent anymore. The question was what humanity would do about it. The attack started without warning. Dae-hyun was repairing a water filtration unit when he heard the sounds. Not the usual forest noises, but something else. Roaring, snarling, the crash of bodies hitting trees. He grabbed his scanner and ran toward the forest edge. Don't! Jiwoo called after him, but he was already moving. The battle was happening deep in the territory that belonged to the scarred female's pack. Through the trees, Dae-hyun could see massive shapes moving, fighting with terrible violence. Two groups of Vrolith, locked in combat over territory. He recognized members of the scarred female's pack, including the cub, now grown large enough to fight alongside the adults. But they were outnumbered. The attacking pack was bigger, led by a massive male, whose roar shook the ground. The fight was brutal and efficient. Claws raked through fur. Teeth found throats. The Vrolith fought like the apex predators they were. But there was strategy too. The defenders worked together, protecting their weaker members, using the terrain to their advantage. But it wasn't enough. The attacking pack pushed forward, driving the defenders back toward a cliff edge. Dae-hyun watched in horror as the scarred female took a blow that sent her rolling. The notched ear male fought desperately to protect her, but 3 attackers surrounded him. Then Dae-hyun saw the cub. It had positioned itself in front of several smaller Vrolith, younglings too small to fight. When one of the attackers lunged toward them, the cub threw itself forward, taking the full force of the blow. The impact sent the young Vrolith tumbling, hitting a rock with a sickening crack. No, Dae-hyun whispered. The attackers, having secured their dominance, retreated into the forest. They'd made their point. This territory was contested now. Dae-hyun didn't think. He just ran. Dae-hyun, stop! Jiwoo's voice screamed in his earpiece. Hyunwoo is calling for backup. Don't go near them. But he was already there, sliding to his knees beside the cub. It was breathing, but blood matted its fur. One leg was twisted at a wrong angle. The cub's 6 eyes opened, unfocused with pain. Hey, it's okay, Dae-hyun said softly. I've got you. The scarred female limped toward him, growling. But it wasn't a threatening sound. She was hurt too, favoring her front leg. She watched as Dae-hyun opened his emergency medical kit. Human medicine wasn't designed for Vrolith biology, but pain was pain, and wounds were wounds. Dae-hyun had studied enough xenobiology to know the basics. He injected the cub with a broad-spectrum painkiller, then began treating the visible injuries. The broken leg was the worst. Dae-hyun had to set it, which made the cub whimper. But it didn't try to bite him. The scarred female stayed close, making low rumbling sounds that seemed to calm the young one. You're being so brave, Dae-hyun murmured, wrapping the leg in a stabilizing splint. He used synthetic tissue patches on the deeper cuts, antibiotic gel on the scratches. The work took an hour, with the entire pack watching from a distance. When he finished, the cub could stand, though it leaned heavily on Dae-hyun. The scarred female approached and did something that took his breath away. She lowered her massive head and gently pressed it against Dae-hyun's shoulder. A gesture of gratitude, unmistakable in its meaning. Hyunwoo arrived with 2 security officers, weapons drawn. Step away from them. Now. Put the weapons down, Dae-hyun said firmly. They're not going to hurt anyone. They just had a territorial battle. They're in combat mode. And I just helped them. Look, the Vrolith pack had formed a protective circle, but not around themselves. around Dae-hyun. They were guarding him against Hyun-woo's people. The military officer stared, his weapon lowering slightly. This is not normal. No, Dae-hyun agreed. It's not. It's friendship. Over the next week, the cub stayed near the camp, recovering from its injuries. Dae-hyun checked on it daily, changing bandages and monitoring healing. The young Vraleth learned to trust him completely, even letting him examine injuries that clearly still hurt. Ji-woo used the time to dive deeper into her research. What she found changed everything. Dae-hyun, you need to see this, she said one evening, pulling up data on her screen. I've been analyzing the ruins scattered across this planet, running dating tests, comparing architectural styles, cross-referencing with galactic historical records, and the Vraleth weren't just advanced. They were spacefaring. They had cities, technology more sophisticated than ours in some ways. Their civilization spanned multiple systems. What happened to them? War. About 3,000 years ago, they encountered a species called the Krell Dominion. The Krell saw the Vraleth as threats, aggressive predators expanding too quickly. The war lasted 200 years. Dae-hyun felt sick. The Vraleth lost. Not exactly. They survived, but their civilization didn't. The Krell destroyed their cities, their infrastructure, their knowledge bases. They didn't commit genocide, but they committed something almost worse. Cultural extinction. The Vraleth retreated back to primitive survival. Yes. And over generations, they forgot who they were. The packs maintained some traditions, the carved toys, certain rituals, but the understanding of why was lost. Dae-hyun looked out the window at the cub, sleeping peacefully under a makeshift shelter he'd built. They're trying to remember. Every broken device they bring us, every interaction they know something's missing. And we can help them find it, Ji-woo said. If we're allowed to. But that was becoming less certain. Hyun-woo had filed multiple reports with the Galactic Council. The responses were growing more alarmed. A sapient predator species, with a history of space travel, that changed the threat assessment completely. Then the scarred female did something extraordinary. She came to the camp's boundary with the striped male, the one who'd examined the scanner so carefully. They made low, rumbling sounds, clearly communicating something important. The cub limped over to them, listened, then turned to Dae-hyun. The young Vraleth chirped, gesturing with its head toward the forest. An invitation. They want you to follow them, Ji-woo said, monitoring from inside. That's insane, Hyun-woo added. You'll be surrounded, vulnerable, or I'll be trusted, Dae-hyun countered. This is what we've been working toward. He followed the Vraleth into the forest, his heart pounding. Ji-woo and Hyun-woo tracked his location via his comm signal, ready to intervene if necessary. But Dae-hyun felt safe. The cub stayed close, and the adults moved with purposeful calm. They walked for nearly an hour, deep into territory Dae-hyun had never explored. Then they stopped at what looked like a natural hill, covered in vegetation. Except it wasn't natural. The striped male began digging, clearing away moss and soil. Beneath was metal, corroded but still intact. A doorway, ancient and sealed. Ji-woo. Are you seeing this? Dae-hyun whispered, knowing his body camera was transmitting. Yes. Those markings on the door? They match the ruins I've been studying. Dae-hyun. That's a Vraleth structure. The scarred female pressed her paw against the door in a specific pattern. Nothing happened. The mechanism was dead after thousands of years. But the intention was clear. She wanted inside. They're asking for your help, Ji-woo said. They remember that this place is important, but they can't access it anymore. Dae-hyun examined the door. The locking mechanism was sophisticated but not impossible to bypass. I need tools, proper equipment. The Vraleth waited patiently as he returned to camp, gathered what he needed, and came back. Hyun-woo followed this time, fascinated, despite his reservations. It took 3 hours to open the door. When it finally slid aside with a groan of ancient machinery, stale air rushed out. Beyond was darkness. Dae-hyun activated a light. The beam revealed a corridor, perfectly preserved, and on the walls were carvings, paintings, writing in a language nobody had seen in 3,000 years. "It's a library," Ji-woo breathed, watching through the camera feed. "They've brought you to their cultural archive." The Vralith didn't enter. They stayed at the threshold, looking at Dae-hyun expectantly. This was their history, their lost past, and they were trusting him to help them reclaim it. "Hyun-woo," Dae-hyun said softly. "Tell the Galactic Council we need to talk." "About what?" "About giving an entire species its memory back." The scarred female rumbled, a sound that somehow felt like hope. The cub pressed against Dae-hyun's side, its repaired toy still clutched close, and in the darkness of the ancient library, the past waited to be rediscovered. But deep in the northern territories, another pack stirred. Its alpha, a Vralith named Tae-sung, had heard of the humans helping the scarred female's pack. He had heard of the library, the ancient place being opened, and Tae-sung believed the old ways had destroyed their people once before. He would not let it happen again. The confrontation was coming, and Dae-hyun didn't even know it yet. The ancient library was unlike anything Dae-hyun had ever seen. The walls were lined with crystalline structures, each one containing data stored in a format that predated modern technology by millennia. Some crystals were dark and dead. Others flickered weakly, barely maintaining their charge after 3,000 years. "This is incredible," Ji-woo whispered, running her scanner over the nearest wall. "The data density here is beyond anything we use. One of these crystals could hold more information than our entire camp database." Hyun-woo stood near the entrance, uncomfortable but unable to deny what he was seeing. "How do we even begin to access this?" "Carefully," Dae-hyun replied. The scarred female and her pack waited outside, never entering the library themselves. It was as if they knew this place was sacred, but had forgotten how to use it. The cub, however, stayed close to Dae-hyun, watching everything with intense curiosity. For 3 days, they worked to understand the system. Dae-hyun and Ji-woo brought equipment from the camp, setting up power sources and analysis tools. The library's own power had failed long ago, but the building's structure remained sound. "Look at this," Ji-woo said, pointing to a series of carvings near the main chamber. "These are instructions. A guide for using the library." The symbols were complex, but patterns emerged. With Ji-woo's linguistic algorithms and Dae-hyun's engineering intuition, they began to decode the system. By the 4th day, they managed to activate a single crystal. The hologram that appeared was breathtaking. It showed a Vralith city in its prime. Towering structures that blended organic curves with geometric precision. Vralith of all sizes, moving through streets, using tools, creating art. Some were working on devices that looked like advanced computers. Others tended to gardens filled with bioluminescent plants. They were beautiful, Ji-woo said softly. The hologram shifted, showing Vralith families. Cubs playing with carved toys identical to the one Dae-hyun had repaired. Adults teaching the young ones, demonstrating tool use, sharing knowledge. The cub beside Dae-hyun made a soft keening sound. It was watching the hologram with all 6 eyes, transfixed. Could it understand what it was seeing? Did it know this was what its people once were? "We need to show the pack," Dae-hyun said. They carried a portable projector outside and activated it. The scarred female and her pack gathered, watching the images of their ancestors. The silence was profound. Some of the Vralith lowered their heads. Others made soft rumbling sounds that felt like mourning. "They remember," Ji-woo whispered. "Not consciously. Maybe. But something in them recognizes this." That night, everything changed. A howl echoed from the northern forest, deep and commanding. The scarred female's pack immediately responded with defensive postures. Through the darkness, shapes emerged. Another pack, larger than the first. At its head was a massive male, Vraleth, easily the largest Daehyun had seen. His fur was darker than the others, and scars covered his body like a map of battles won. His 6 eyes glowed with fierce intelligence. "That's the northern pack," Jiwoo said, checking her territorial maps. "The Alpha is in our database. Local Vraleth avoid his territory." "What's he doing here?" The answer became clear quickly. The massive Alpha, whom Daehyun mentally named Tae-sung, approached the library entrance. He looked at the equipment, at the Vraleth watching the holograms, at Daehyun. Then he roared, a sound full of challenge and warning. The scarred female stepped forward, positioning herself between Tae-sung and Daehyun. Her pack flanked her, ready to fight. But Tae-sung's pack was twice their size. "This is about territory," Hyunwoo said, hand moving to his weapon. "Or maybe the library itself." But Daehyun watched Tae-sung's eyes and saw something else. Not aggression, but concern. Fear, even. This wasn't a territorial dispute. This was something deeper. "Jiwoo," Daehyun said quietly, "can you show the hologram of the war? The one you found in the historical records?" "What? Why?" "Trust me." Jiwoo adjusted the projector. The image changed, showing Vraleth ships engaged in battle. Cities burning. The Krell Dominion, forces overwhelming the defenders. The slow, terrible collapse of an entire civilization. Tae-sung stopped mid-roar. His pack went silent. Every Vraleth, from both groups, stared at the hologram. "They don't just remember their glory," Daehyun said softly. "They remember their fall. Somewhere deep in their cultural memory, they know the old ways led to destruction." Tae-sung rumbled, a complex sound that felt like speech. He gestured at the library, at the humans, at the scarred female's pack. His meaning was clear, even without translation. "This path is dangerous. It destroyed us before." The scarred female responded with her own rumbles, gesturing at the repaired toys, the medical supplies Daehyun had used, the care shown to her pack. "But these humans are different. They help. They heal." The 2 alphas faced each other, neither backing down. The tension was unbearable. Daehyun knew that if they fought here, someone would die. Maybe many someones. He stepped forward, between the 2 massive predators. "Daehyun, no!" Hyunwoo shouted. But Daehyun held up his hands, empty and open. He looked at Tae-sung, then at the scarred female. Slowly, carefully, he knelt down and placed his palm on the ground. A gesture of peace, of submission, even. Tae-sung could kill him with one swipe. Instead, the massive alpha stepped closer, sniffing Daehyun carefully. Then he looked at the cub, still clutching its repaired toy. Something shifted in Tae-sung's eyes. He rumbled a command to his pack. They lowered their aggressive postures, though they remained wary. Tae-sung himself sat down, a clear signal that he wouldn't attack. "He's willing to watch," Jiwoo translated from the posture analysis. "To see what happens. But he doesn't trust it yet." "That's okay," Daehyun said. "Trust takes time." Over the following weeks, both packs maintained an uneasy peace. Tae-sung's Vraleth watched from a distance as Daehyun and Jiwoo worked to restore more of the library. Slowly, they recovered more data, agricultural techniques that could improve the Vraleth's hunting territories, medical knowledge that could help injured pack members, stories, legends, poems that spoke of Vraleth values, courage, loyalty, protection of the weak. And then Jiwoo found the file that changed everything. "Daehyun," she called, her voice shaking with excitement. "Look at this. It's an educational archive, specifically about child-rearing and cultural transmission." The hologram showed young Vraleth cubs being taught by their elders. And prominently featured were the carved toys, each one representing a different virtue or lesson. "The toy you repaired," Jiwoo continued, "was a teaching tool. It represents the bond between parent and child, the duty to protect and nurture. By fixing it, you honored one of their most sacred traditions. I didn't know that, Daehyun said quietly. But you did it anyway. That's why it mattered. The cub, always nearby, chirped softly. It still carried that toy everywhere, a symbol of connection between two species, but their time was running out. Hyun-woo received a transmission that made his face go pale. They're coming. The Galactic Council is sending a fleet. When? 2 weeks. Maybe less. They've decided the Vralith represent a threat, especially now that they're regaining their technology. That's insane. They're not a threat, they're a sapient predator species with a history of interstellar warfare, Hyun-woo interrupted. That's how the Council sees it. And after what the Krell did to them, they don't want to take chances. So what? They're going to wipe them out? They're going to implement containment protocols. Orbital strikes on major pack concentrations. The Vralith will survive as a species, but their population will be reduced to levels considered manageable. Ji-woo stood up so fast her chair fell over. That's genocide. That's policy, Hyun-woo said grimly. And I can't stop it. None of us can. Dae-hyun looked out at the Vralith gathered near the library. The scarred female's pack, now joined cautiously by some of Tae-sung's Vralith. They were learning together, watching the holograms, beginning to remember who they once were. We have to prove to the Council that they're not a threat, Dae-hyun said. How? Then we work faster. For 14 days and nights, they worked, without stopping. Dae-hyun and Ji-woo restored as much of the library as they could, documenting everything. The Vralith watched, learning, beginning to understand their own history. And slowly, something remarkable happened. The packs began to cooperate. Tae-sung's Vralith and the scarred female's pack started working together, sharing resources, protecting each other's young. The ancient holograms showed them how their ancestors had lived in harmony, and something in that knowledge resonated. We're running out of time, Ji-woo said on the 13th day. The fleet arrives tomorrow. Then we finish this tonight, Dae-hyun replied. They activated the library's central core, channeling all available power into it. One by one, the crystals came alive, filling the ancient building with light. The holograms merged into a single, breathtaking display, the entire history of the Vralith civilization. From their primitive beginnings to their technological peak, their terrible war, their fall, and now, maybe, their rebirth. Every Vralith from both packs gathered to watch. In the glow of their ancestors' legacy, predators wept. The Galactic Council fleet appeared in orbit at dawn, 12 ships forming a precise formation above Velker Prime. Their presence cast shadows across the forest, as the rising suns caught their hulls. In the command ship, Admiral Hae-jin reviewed the reports one final time. A sapient predator species. Advanced technology being restored. History of interstellar conflict. The risk assessment was clear. Containment was necessary. Open a channel to the surface, she ordered. Human research camp. You have 72 hours to evacuate. After that, we begin containment protocols. On the ground, Hyun-woo received the transmission with a heavy heart. He'd argued against this decision, filed his own reports praising the Vraleth's peaceful behavior. But the Council had made its choice. We have to leave, he told Dae-hyun and Ji-woo. No, Dae-hyun said simply. This isn't a request. It's an evacuation order. Then evacuate without me. Ji-woo nodded. I'm staying too. You'll die. When the containment strikes begin, nothing down here survives. Then maybe the Council will think twice before firing on their own people, Ji-woo said quietly. Hyun-woo stared at them both. Then he made a decision that would define his career. I'm staying too. If this is the end, someone should witness what we're destroying. The Vralith knew something was wrong. The scarred female and Tae-sung both positioned their packs defensively. sensing the threat from above even if they didn't understand the technology. Dae-hyun stood before them, wishing desperately that he could explain. The cub pressed against his leg, no longer small but still seeking comfort. The repaired toy was worn smooth, now from constant handling. "We have 3 days," Jiwoo said. 3 days to convince the council that the Vrolith deserve to live. How do we do that? We let them speak for themselves. It was a desperate plan, maybe an impossible one. But they had to try. Jiwoo worked frantically to create a translation algorithm, building on months of data about Vrolith vocalizations. It wasn't perfect, but it could convey basic meanings. Dae-hyun set up a broadcast system, powerful enough to reach the fleet above. On the second day, disaster struck. Taesung's youngest cubs, curious and reckless, wandered too close to a rival pack's territory. That pack, frightened by the ships overhead and aggressive in their fear, attacked without warning. The cubs were outnumbered and outmatched. By the time Taesung's pack arrived, 2 cubs were dead, and 3 more badly injured. Dae-hyun heard the grief-stricken howls from the camp. He grabbed his medical kit and ran, not thinking about danger, only about helping. The scene was carnage. Blood soaked the ground. The attacking pack had fled, but the damage was done. Taesung stood over his fallen cubs, making a sound Dae-hyun had never heard before. Pure, agonizing loss. The scarred female's pack arrived moments later. She saw the bodies, saw Taesung's grief, and did something extraordinary. She began grooming the fallen cubs, a gesture of mourning and respect. Her pack joined her, including the cub who had brought Dae-hyun that first broken toy. Both packs, former rivals, united in grief. Dae-hyun worked on the survivors, using everything he had to save them. The wounds were terrible, but human medicine could help. One cub was too far gone, dying even as Dae-hyun tried desperately to stop the bleeding. But the other 2 he could save. He worked for hours, both packs watching in silence. When he finished, exhausted and covered in blood, Taesung approached him. The massive alpha lowered his head until it touched the ground at Dae-hyun's feet. A gesture of total submission, of absolute trust. "He's acknowledging you as pack," Jiwoo whispered, recording everything. "You're not just an ally anymore. You're family." But there was no time to appreciate the moment. On the 3rd day, the fleet moved into strike position. "This is Admiral Hee-jin." The transmission crackled across all channels. "Evacuation deadline has passed. Beginning containment in 1 hour. This is your final warning." Dae-hyun stood at the broadcasting station. Vrolith from both packs gathered around him. The cub, now almost fully grown, stood at his side. Hyun-woo operated the camera. Ji-woo managed the translation software. "Open all channels," Dae-hyun said. "Let's show them what they're about to destroy." The broadcast went live, transmitted directly to the fleet, and, through them, to the Galactic Council chambers. Dae-hyun spoke first, his voice steady despite his fear. "Admiral Hee-jin, council members, I am Dae-hyun, human researcher on Velkar Prime. You're about to commit genocide based on fear and incomplete information. Before you fire, I ask that you watch what I'm about to show you." The camera panned across the library, showing the restored holograms. Images of Vrolith culture, their art, their philosophy, their values. Jiwoo provided narration, explaining how the species had fallen and how they were now struggling to reclaim their heritage. "They're not preparing for war," she said. "They're trying to remember how to live in peace." Then Dae-hyun activated the translation software. The scarred female stepped forward, making a series of rumbling vocalizations. The computer converted them to text, scrolling across the screen. "We are Vrolith. We were lost. These humans helped us remember. We do not wish to fight. We wish to rebuild. Please do not take this chance from us." Taesung came forward next. His words were harder to translate, his dialect different. But the meaning came through. "We feared the old ways. We thought remembering would destroy us again. But the human showed us kindness. Costs nothing and saves everything. We were wrong to fear. One by one, other Vraleth came forward. The notched ear male, the striped hunter, even the cubs, chirping in voices the computer struggled to interpret. Finally, Daehyun's cub approached the camera. It set down its repaired toy, that first symbol of connection between species. This human fixed what was broken, the translation read. In us, in our past, in our future. Please do not break us again. The broadcast went silent. On the ships above, Admiral Hee-jin watched with tears in her eyes. She had come prepared to eliminate a threat. Instead, she saw people struggling to survive, to grow, to become better than their tragic past. Maintain position, she ordered her fleet. No strikes. I'm contacting the Council. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted 6 hours. Every member watched the broadcast. They saw the library, the cultural restoration, the bond between species. They saw predators grieving their dead and protecting their young. They saw intelligence, emotion, and potential. The vote wasn't unanimous. Some members still argued for containment, citing historical risks and threat potential. But the majority saw what Hee-jin saw, what Dae-hyun had seen all along. The Vraleth deserved a chance. The official declaration came at sunset. Velkar Prime was granted protected world status. The Vraleth were recognized as a recovering sapient species. They would receive support, not suppression. Help, not harm. When Dae-hyun heard the news, he collapsed to his knees in relief. The cub pressed against him, chirping softly. The scarred female and Tae-sung approached together. Both alphas, united now. We did it, Ji-woo said, laughing and crying at the same time. We actually did it. Hyun-woo smiled, his military precision cracking to show genuine joy. You crazy. Stubborn humans did it. I just watched. Over the following months, the transformation was remarkable. More Vraleth packs came to the library, drawn by news of the restoration. Human engineers arrived to help, bringing equipment and knowledge. The Galactic Council sent specialists in cultural recovery and xenobiology. The scarred female and Taesung's packs merged, forming the core of a new Vraleth society. Other alphas, seeing the success, began cooperating with their neighbors. Pack warfare decreased. Resource sharing increased. Cubs from different territories played together. Ji-woo established the Vraleth Cultural Institute, dedicated to recovering and preserving their heritage. She taught classes where young Vraleth learned about their ancestors' achievements. The carved toys, once simple objects, became treasured educational tools again. Hyun-woo received a formal commendation for his role, along with a note in his permanent record about inappropriate attachment to mission subjects. He framed both with equal pride. Admiral Hee-jin visited the surface once, walking through the restored sections of the ancient library. I almost destroyed this, she said softly to Dae-hyun. I almost killed them all because we were afraid. Fear is natural, Dae-hyun replied. But compassion is a choice. You made the right one. The cub, now a young adult named formally in Vraleth tradition as something Ji-woo translated as Bridgewalker, became Dae-hyun's permanent companion. It still carried that repaired toy, though now it understood its full meaning. The bond between parent and child, teacher and student, protector and protected. The bond between species, proven possible by one act of simple kindness. 5 years later, the first Vraleth delegation visited the Galactic Council chambers. They wore ceremonial decorations carved from wood and stone, patterns that echoed their ancient culture. Bridgewalker was among them, representing the younger generation. They spoke through translation devices, their voices rumbling with emotion. They thanked the council for the second chance. They promised to rebuild their civilization, with wisdom learned from their fall. And they formally requested that Dae-hyun receive the highest honor in Vraleth culture, Adoption into the pack. Not as a pet or subordinate, but as an equal. As family. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Daehyun knelt before the assembled Vralith elders. The scarred female, now gray with age, placed her paw on his shoulder. Bridgewalker stood at his other side, that old repaired toy placed carefully between them. You fixed what was broken in one cub, the translation declared. And in doing so, you fixed what was broken in all of us. You are pack. You are Vralith. You are home. Daehyun looked at the faces around him, human and Vralith both. Jiwoo stood with her students, tears streaming down her face. Hyunwoo saluted. Military precision softened by a genuine smile. Admiral Heejin watched from the diplomatic section, nodding approval. And Bridgewalker chirped, that same sound of contentment from so long ago. Because sometimes, fixing one small broken thing was enough to change an entire world. Sometimes, kindness was the strongest force in the universe. And sometimes, a human could win not by fighting, but by caring.